Yes, people, welcome back to GNA TV and welcome back to Chelsea Fan TV as well, guys. You're watching us over there. I hope you guys are all having a great day or a great week. It's been a couple of days since I've been able to stream. I'm very busy with off out of the Chelsea stuff at the moment, but I have got Ben Jacobs with us again. We're going to be introducing him in a second, but let's cue the intro and get on with it. Yes, people, welcome back to GNA TV. I hope you guys are well. And as you can see, Ben Jacobs is back with us. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm great. It's good to be back. Busy times for Chelsea. And if I sound just a tiny bit groggy, it is because I was in Manchester yesterday covering the opening game of the Women's Euros. And I probably got in at about 2 a.m. after the game because the press conferences and stuff run on a bit. And then I got a train back to Edinburgh, where I am now in the sunshine at about 6 a.m. So it's been a long day, but it's been a busy day with lots of Chelsea news flying around.
Yeah, 100%. And it sounds like you're becoming a vampire, mate, by the sounds of it. You're up all night and you probably only get a couple of hours sleep, I'm assuming. Is that true?
Well, usually I sleep okay, actually, because unlike some perhaps transfer specialists, I'm covering a variety of stories. So I can sort of pick and choose, especially to a US audience. CBS have a interest, let's say, in a Ronaldo, but not necessarily a Nathan Ake. So even though I try and give you all of the information, there is that prioritization where you can be a bit more discerning as to the global transfers or the ones of interest to a North American audience. So that means I get just a little bit more sleep. But the early part of the window so far has just got a slightly bizarre feel about it, with fans, clubs, even agents, almost acting like it's the final few days and weeks of the window. And I think in the middle part, once teams are actually building up to, let's say, their first game of the season, then I think it will slow and we'll get a real lull before it picks up like it is now towards the last week. But I would be surprised if it continues at this pace throughout the whole window.
Yeah. It does feel like it's the end of the window. The way, say, just Chelsea fans specifically, because I see them more on my timeline being a Chelsea fan. But if it feels like, that we've only got a couple of days left and that we're not doing anything, and all of a sudden all this news is flying around and it's got that feel about it, like as if we were going to panic buy and things like that. But let's get into it anyway, because there is a lot to sort of discuss. Guys, make sure that you're smashing the like buttons. Let's try and get this on GNA TV and Chelsea Fan TV over 200 likes, please, as well, while we're going through the show as well. I want to start with De Ligt, because De Ligt's an interesting one at the moment. Obviously, Chelsea were favourites for pretty much most of the long run. It didn't feel like there was anyone really interested in signing him. All of a sudden, we get some Bayern journos coming out and making it clear that apparently Bayern Munich are involved and that they have bidded and that he wants Bayern. And it's now on Chelsea to sort of outbid them. What's your thoughts on all of this as well? And is there anything else that you could probably share with us on this?
Yeah, that summary is not quite my understanding. I mean, first of all, if you consume these kind of transfers via social media and start using words early in races before talks are advanced, like favourites, then you're always going to be disappointed, or more often than not, as a fan. And that's just purely because every football club has countless targets that fans want, and you're only going to get, even optimistically, 6 or 7, which might be the number that Chelsea need, but therefore each of those targets will have a short list of 3 or 4. So people kind of almost look at it like a linear race between 2 people or cars, and they go, oh, we're ahead in the De Ligt race. Oh, now somebody's catching up with us. And the transfer window doesn't quite work like that. So the situation has always been that there has been tons of interest in De Ligt. And some clubs are quite private in that interest and will sneak up last minute. PSG and Liverpool are notorious for that, not that they're specifically interested in this player. And other clubs, for whatever reason, either make their interest known or it gets leaked out into the media. So De Ligt is Chelsea's number 1 defensive target. And they certainly came to the table thinking that a swap deal or a straight cash deal might be possible, and that the fee had been softened at Juventus's end. And Bayern's interest was definitely later in this particular narrative. And Juventus have used it certainly to push up the price by 5 or 6 million. So whereas perhaps Chelsea were confident of a straight cash deal somewhere around 75 million, it's going to be at least 75 million now. And who knows, Juventus might even push for 80 million. But beyond that, it's very early stages. They're not anywhere near as advanced, Chelsea or Bayern Munich, as, say, for example, Chelsea have tried to be with Nathan Ake. Even if nothing comes of that, there was far more substantial, far more defined, far more specific financial talks. Whereas at the moment, both Chelsea and Bayern are nowhere near that. They're trying to work out what a guaranteed fee would be and what an overall package would have to entail. And then you would still have to negotiate what are the definite add-ons, what are the probable add-ons, and what are the unlikely add-ons. And using those words, what I mean is a definite add-on is going to be something like, we'll definitely pay you X amount of money if the player makes 10 appearances or 20 appearances or stays at the club for a year. A probable add-on might be 30 plus appearances in a season, or something around European qualification. And a possible add-on might be something like winning the Premier League or the Champions League. And that takes time, because scenario A, which is your, from Chelsea's point of view, best case scenario, is they have all the success in the world, but then they pay all of the add-ons. And the worst case scenario is that Chelsea don't do well on the field, and then it's a lot cheaper deal. And this takes a lot of back and forth. And there's nothing at that point yet with De Ligt for either Bayern or for Chelsea. But what we do know is that Chelsea's offer has a lot more cash up front, and Bayern wants to pay less. And although they are prepared to pay the majority of their upfront in one lump sum, they want that number to be lower than Chelsea's. So that might give Chelsea an edge. And then the debate on social media, if you like, over the player and where he wants to go is totally unsubstantiated from what I gather, speaking to sources close to both De Ligt and his agent. Of course, the reports in Germany say one thing. Of course, the reports in England say the other thing. But the truth is, he's open to the Premier League. He's open to Bayern Munich. There's been no verbal agreement with Bayern Munich that says he will pick them if they agree a fee. It's a completely open race. And that's because nothing is advanced enough to call it anything else. So Chelsea fans can have confidence that if they get a deal, they've got a very strong chance of getting the player. And that's exactly the same for Bayern fans. And that sounds like it's sitting on the fence. But as ever, I don't like to sensationalize a story or a transfer target until it's at the point where there is substance to it. And at this stage, it's too early in the race. And that's what makes it an open race. So Chelsea have confidence that they can get to a number and that the player is open to the move. But Bayern are saying exactly the same thing. So it reminds me of Lisandro Martinez between Arsenal and Manchester United. Both clubs stand a very realistic possibility. But to say anything more at this stage, like he's definitely leaning towards Chelsea or the clubs will agree a fee, is jumping the gun. We still have, I would say, a week or two of talks, or certainly 5 or 6 working days of talks, so into Chelsea's US pre-season tour to get to that point. So there is going to be an element of patience to this, but make no mistake, in terms of priorities, now that Sterling has come in, De Ligt is the number one on the list now that Boehly and Tuchel would like to get through the door if they possibly can.
Yeah, you would like to think so. Obviously, I thought, to be honest, as a Chelsea fan, that the centre-back area would have been probably one of the first areas that we would have resolved. And when you think at the beginning of this summer window, the links that are heavily on Jules Kounde, it was kind of, for me and for most Chelsea fans, that it was that he was going to be the one of the first through the door. Obviously, that seems to have dragged out a bit more. Obviously, we've managed to get rid of Lukaku, and it seems like we've not switched our attention fully, but we've started to look more into the sort of the forward line. We've got the Sterling one. All right, personal terms are there, but we've not had the full agreement with the clubs yet, which we're waiting on. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think you're right. I think, to be honest, there has to be a lot of patience, and I get asked all the time on Twitter by a lot of Chelsea fans, and I always say to them, like, you do know there's still just under 50 days left of this transfer window. Like, we need to calm down a little bit and not jump the gun. There's a lot that needs to happen, and I just feel that where Chelsea fans worry is that pre-season's around the corner, and ideally you would like to have a couple of these players here You know, with mixing with some of the boys in pre-season, obviously have a pre-season under the belt before we go into the season, and it may not be the case because I do still feel that we're going to do quite a bit of work, and I feel that there will be numbers coming through the door in terms of certain positions and that. But like you said, it's just things that it can't be done over a certain day. So we're just going to have to wait it out and see what happens. But moving on from the De Ligt element of things, I wanted to just talk about a bit of Ake and Kounde, because obviously from what we've heard recently on the Ake thing was that Man City have just overpriced him a little bit slightly, is what I've read, shall I say, on Twitter, and Chelsea are not really interested in paying anything over. I think it was around 50 million, which is what I read anyway. And then there's obviously talks about Kounde, and it sort of died off with Kounde, and then it's again some news articles and journals are saying, well, actually Chelsea are looking to potentially pay around 60 million to Sevilla for Kounde. Is there, from your understanding, is it weighing from maybe one more to one than the other, or is it still just up in the air between the both, do you feel? Or does De Ligt have such a big thing in this as well?
Well, I mean, De Ligt is the one that they want, and Kounde is the historical one that they would bring in. And I think that Ake will be off the table if Kounde and De Ligt become viable options at the right price. Kounde's never been off the table. I don't know why. Possibly just because so many other names got mentioned, and you'll get that when you're looking for two centre backs. So effectively, your number of possible targets that you seriously consider will double, and that's why there's so many names out there. I think sometimes fans forget that you're not just looking for one centre back but two, and therefore the volume of names that will be genuinely looked at and linked and rumoured and factored in by agents are all part of why the shortlist is basically a long list. But Jules Kounde dates back as part of a signing that the Marina regime wanted, if you like, terms agreed, 5-year deal, player open to it, regardless of any kind of Barcelona interest. And Barcelona are also looking at plenty of other defenders as well. So it's always just been about Chelsea being able to agree a fee, and possibly two, factoring in this desire to bring in two and overall 6 or 7 names. Because as I've said many times now, if you want 2 attackers, possibly a midfielder, 2 centre-backs, maybe a right-back and a goalkeeper, and you've got to do all of that within 200 to 250 million or so, even if you're staggering payments, you have to be very, very careful that you don't just cave to what to a fan might seem like, oh, an extra 5 million, but it's at the expense then of balancing your books or what makes financial sense. And also, no big club ever wants to set a precedent of overpaying, because then that message goes out there into the market. Oh, Chelsea are looking for a centre-back. Oh, they gave Sevilla 5 million more. Then you go back to Manchester City for Nathan Ake and they say, yep, it's 50 million. And we know what you paid for Kounde and we think he's equivalent to that or better than that. So one deal, if you do it badly at non-market value, can give you a weak reputation of caving. And with Marina gone and Boehly leading, Chelsea need to be sure that they're strict negotiators, because the market and the industry don't yet know Boehly. So if they think they can play him, and I think clubs will try their luck, oh, you're telling us you want to trade a player. Oh, we know that you need this urgent centre-back. There's players going out in that area, 50 million. Let's see how you respond to that. So some of it's gamesmanship, some of it's the reality of the fact that Manchester City rate Nathan Ake and think that they'll have other interest. I know that Newcastle have been mentioned in the conversation as well. But I think it's not slowness. That's the thing that maybe some are getting frustrated about. Social media leans you towards thinking that the process is slow and Boehly is somehow indecisive. But the facts that we know so far don't actually suggest that. He's immediately met with all of the major agents of the players. He's had talks with Mendes. He put down a Raphinha deal very, very quickly. Sterling was only slow because of Sterling, not because of Chelsea and Todd Boehly, because he asked for time to decide. And Manchester City tried to make a pitch to potentially keep him as well. None of that is of Boehly's doing. He's been at the club for a month. He's got Sterling in, who I think is a marquee signing. He got a Raphinha deal really quickly. They're doing about as much as they can with De Ligt. They're doing about as much as they can with Nathan Ake. So when you consider what's fast and slow and what happens and what doesn't happen, it's nothing to do with the minority owner, chairman, and interim sporting director not being quick or proactive. It's a variety of factors. Some targets are realistic, some are overpriced, some have got other suitors, some have got the selling club playing hardball with the fee, but that doesn't mean slowness. That's just the reality of a transfer market. And the more we know and the more we talk about because of social media, the more frustrated certain fans get. But actually, Boehly, from everything I see and hear and sources I talk to, is actually moving very, very fast.
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't really fully understand what's actually going on behind the scenes, and we only really, I feel, get spoon-fed a lot of certain news, shall we say, and maybe they're a lot ahead with certain things than what we know, and that's fair enough, because that's, in fairness, when you think of Chelsea and the way they've operated, even under the Roman Abramovich era, they've always sort of, in my eyes, operated in that way, in the darkness, in the silence, and then bang, there you go. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the centre-back roles as well. Piers is actually in the chat. He said, do you actually think we get 6 signings though, Ben? Like, do you think Chelsea are capable of doing that?
Oh, yeah, by the end of the window, I think it will be 5 or 6. I never like to put a specific number on it because you almost have to take it one by one, position by position. But it's obvious that Chelsea need 2 centre-backs, and they'll get 2 centre-backs. It's obvious that they might need a midfielder, but that may not be the urgent priority. And 1 more attacker plus Sterling. And I still think that they would like a goalkeeper. So it will be a disappointing window, in my opinion, if 5 senior names don't come into Chelsea. I think 6 is the target. And I think 7 is a possibility, because just look at the volume of outgoings and the need to bring in replacements. And how can you not come to, I would say, even pessimistically 5 and optimistically 7? So 2 attackers, especially with Ziyech hoping to get that move to Milan, Werner, future uncertain. Pulisic, I think, will stay. But regardless of that, they wanted 2 in attack. So they've got Sterling, and it's always been Sterling plus 1 other. There's plenty of time left in the window to get those 2. Then 2 centre-backs for me, regardless of who they are, and even if they did get to a point of panic buying or going a bit left field, they just need those numbers. So they're going to have to bring in 2 defenders. And you could still argue 3, with a right back being a possibility. And we still don't really know yet any full clarity on Kepa. So a goalkeeper might become a priority a bit later in the window. So goalkeeper, 2 centre-backs, right back, midfielder, 2 attackers would be 7. I'm not saying that all of them will come in, but that would be your maximum, I would say. And I think 5 would be the minimum. And obviously 6 is just an average in between those 2. So 6 is very realistic, in my opinion.
Interesting. I always felt that we could easily get 5 to 6 signings. I think the longer the window goes on, I think a lot of Chelsea fans feel that that may not happen. Some are saying, oh, no, we might even struggle to get 3. But you're right. In hindsight, Chelsea are kind of forced in positions to have to buy anyway. When you look at the central back areas, we're going to talk about Alonso and Aspe a bit later on. Obviously, more people leaving the football club. The forward line as well. Obviously, Lukaku's gone. Is Ziyech going to go? They're going to have to be replaced. And where I want to go next, obviously, is the midfield area. Before we got onto Frenkie de Jong, which is obviously quite interesting in terms of what we heard today, there's been talks about, say, small talk in around this guy. I did see your comment on social media about this guy, but what are your thoughts? Because I don't know much about him, to be honest. I've not watched loads of him. I know Pep from what Pep said, thinks he's a world-class midfielder, which is what his comments were. But are Chelsea actually linked to Nunes?
No, not in my opinion at this stage. It's all rumour as far as the agent side is concerned. And usually the agents are the one fueling rumour. So then when the agent indicates that it's rumour, they know nothing about an approach or a bid, then that either means that it's come from the Chelsea side prior to making a bid and the names just got out there early, or there's no substance to it. One thing's for sure, Chelsea are not preparing any kind of bid at this stage. And if they were, the agent would know about it. And people are putting 2 and 2 together because there's a slight misconception that Mendes is the agent and he isn't. But Mendes's agency have a partnership with his agent. So when people therefore know that Boehly met with Mendes, they immediately think that this is one of the players that might well have been mentioned. And it is possible, of course, that Mendes is just putting out feelers on behalf of the agent, but once again, the agent would still know about that. Mendes is not going to be striking deals to the point where Chelsea are thinking of numbers before the player's agent has a clue or confirms anything. And agents don't normally go on record. They don't normally deny things that can be good for their clients, because a link with Chelsea is decent for value. It's decent for reputation. So one of the most reliable things in a window is when either the agent, people close to the agent, or people close to the player shoot something down, especially when it's a move to a big club like Chelsea. And at this stage, all sources close to either the player or the agency are saying that it's completely unsubstantiated and they've had absolutely no approach from Chelsea Football Club. So the only way that there could be substance to it is if there's a Chelsea interest and their first point of inquiry is to the club, and the club have totally blanked the agent from any kind of communication, which is very unlikely. But it's just a case of monitoring for now. It's not a priority position at this stage comparative to defence and another attacker either for Chelsea. So I don't think there's too much to it at this stage, but one to watch over the window, because if they do come in for the player and it develops, he is an outstanding talent, excellent composure, good tenacity, decent passer of the ball, very disciplined, and by all accounts, a good character to have in the dressing room as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I feel, again, that there's a certain part of the Chelsea fan base that feel that the central midfield area or the DM area is quite an important area moving forward, and especially in the Thomas Tuchel system as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if Chelsea, once they sort out the central back areas and another forward, whether Raphinha stays or goes, we'll have to wait and see. Or Dembele, for example, still hasn't signed that contract, if they will revert to looking at a midfielder. But there has been some sort of news coming out today on Frenkie de Jong. Now, we know he's been linked to Man United, and Barcelona and Man United themselves. It's been sort of a bit of a hard deal between the two of them. But then Chelsea's name's been mentioned, and it's started to heat up a lot more as well. And some other journalists have actually confirmed that it's true. I mean, what's your thoughts on Frenkie de Jong to Chelsea?
I mean, de Jong to Chelsea is actually historical. And this is another Marina name that has been on Chelsea's radar for a little bit of time, but nothing was kind of done with it. And Chelsea will obviously have watched on with the painstaking negotiations that Manchester United have had with Barcelona. And they will be a little bit wary, perhaps, of the fact that not only is the price high, but the process of getting from a guaranteed fee to an all-in deal has been very difficult. And Barcelona are on record, not that Laporta on record always carries much weight, but Barcelona, let's not forget, are on record as saying that the player won't be sold. But the challenge for Barcelona is they've got such a long queue of incomings that even with some injection of cash at the moment that's just come in, they might still need that transfer fee. And then if they want to keep de Jong and not take that transfer fee, they're hoping that he'll take a pay cut. So suddenly any offer from Chelsea or Manchester United looks quite lucrative in comparison to what Barcelona want de Jong to earn. The situation is actually quite in de Jong's control because he's contracted long-term to Barcelona, unlike Dembele. So if he does just want to carry on playing on his current wage, he can do so. And let's not forget that not just Barcelona have said he's not for sale, but de Jong's said that Barcelona is his dream club. So all of this is a challenge for Chelsea. The good news, I think, for Chelsea is that if they choose to advance this, the Champions League appeal and the stability within the club comparative to Manchester United will benefit them, in my opinion. And de Jong, in my view, just my personal view, would pick Chelsea over Manchester United. And I emphasize that's just my personal view because Chelsea are not in an advanced enough position to call this a straight race yet. And Manchester United are not in a position to feel confident of getting this over the line either, because all indications still point towards De Jong if Barcelona want to keep him staying at Barcelona. So it's quite a bizarre one, because actually whether De Jong goes or not to Chelsea or Manchester United is kind of contingent on Barcelona telling him they would like him to leave because they need the fee that his transfer would present. And if Barcelona don't do that, I think De Jong is actually going to be intent to stay at the Camp Nou. So it may be true that Chelsea have an interest. It may be the case that if Manchester United finally make headway, Chelsea use the opportunity to try and hijack the deal, and then they would be in a very strong position. But by the same token, there's nothing yet, contrary to reports out there that get everyone excited, that suggests Chelsea are in any way advanced. And if they want to be advanced, they're going to have to move quickly, which comes back to what I said before, that people saying Boehly doesn't move quickly. Well, if you get De Jong, it's evidence that Boehly moves very, very quickly, because Manchester United have gone through meticulous, painstaking avenues to try and get this deal done. They think that they're nearly there, yet at the same time, Barcelona say, nope, we're not selling him. And that's the transfer window all over, that you get conflicting narratives, you get things said on record that are different to off record, but it won't be a very easy negotiation from Chelsea's perspective if they are to make headway here. But it is absolutely true that De Jong is somebody that Chelsea have admired for quite some time and is on their radar. It's been monitored, the Manchester United talks with Barcelona, and it remains to be seen at this point whether Chelsea choose to advance anything.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, I'm reading a comment on Twitter actually from Barca Centre, quite a big page as well, and they're saying that they feel that Chelsea are willing to pay around sort of 60 million euros, but also use Azpilicueta and Marcos Alonso as a part of the deal, because obviously, as we already know, both these players are actually quite comfortable or happy to join Barcelona, want it to happen. Is that, and again, I know we're just assuming it, but is this another element, if Chelsea were to heat things up, where they could potentially use these two players to try and, get the deal done, do you feel?
I think it's unlikely. And I also think that because the two players you mentioned are hoping to make that move anyway and not of high value due to various situations, financially speaking, I mean, all of the control over any possible deal for De Jong is with Barcelona, and I think they will only go for a straight cash deal. And I have no insight as to specifically, because that particular angle has only just broken, so I can't claim to have tried to stand that up in the last few hours. But with Manchester United, there was no possibility of any kind of swap deal. And speaking to Barcelona sources about De Jong and the mechanics of that deal, it was always the case that Barcelona only wanted cash, because that is their necessity to balance the books. And, they may speak of Alonso and Azpilicueta, and they're definitely two names that they want, but the cash is basically for Lewandowski and Raphinha first and foremost. So therefore, anything that takes off liquid capital is not of appeal to Barcelona, even if it gives them two targets, because they think they can get these two targets from Chelsea anyway. So that's the first thing to say. Now, I'll go back to Barcelona and put the rumor, if you like, report of a possible swap deal to them. But my understanding is always that those Chelsea players wouldn't be leveraged. We know Todd Boehly likes a swap deal. The other thing to say is that if Chelsea's offer, as you claim, is 60 million euros and two players, they're going to get absolutely nowhere near a deal for De Jong. They're going to have to pay a base rate of probably more like 65 million and then add 15 to 20 million of add-ons. So it's going to be about 80 million euros all in to get anywhere close to a deal with Barcelona, which has been Manchester United's struggle. So of course you can lowball it. Of course you can talk about other players being factored into the mix, but fundamentally Barcelona want cash. They've got interest and they're saying they don't want to sell. So if Chelsea think that there's a starting offer, let's say, that is a point of conversation to get things moving. And I'm not by any way saying that is the case, because this is only really just broken this morning, and sources that I have floated it to are not convinced that anything is that advanced at this stage. But if Chelsea do try and hijack the Manchester United deal, then nothing that you've just put to the table, the two players or the base fee, is going to be enough to get that deal over the line. So this is part of the negotiation. You have to start low, or tactically, we know Boehly likes to test the water with possible swap deals. So it would all be logical if there is substance to it. But like I say, Barcelona are going to hold out for a great deal of money, inclusive of add-ons for Frenkie de Jong, and Chelsea are going to have to be prepared to pay that. Otherwise, the deal simply won't happen.
Fair enough. We'll have to wait and see what happens to that, whether that heats up a bit more at a later stage. We have to make sure that we keep an eye on it. Guys, there's over 950 of you guys here combined. Big up to every single one of you guys that are here. Make sure that we're smashing the likes. Get this over 200 likes on both GNA TV and Chelsea Fan TV, guys. And subscribe on both channels as well. You can find Ben Jacobs on Twitter as well. It's in his Avi there as well. So you can always search him up and give him a follow as well. He's on his road to 100k, ain't you, Ben, on Twitter, if I'm right in saying?
Not quite 100k. I think that's a bit ambitious, but I'm not shy, I think, of 80.
Yeah, okay. Nice. All right, I want to move on to the forward line, because there's been some interesting news in and around Cristiano Ronaldo. And obviously he's not training, or he hasn't gone supposedly on pre-season with the United team. They've said it's due to family reasons. And then there was talks about that, potentially Man United could allow him to go, but it'd have to be anything in the regions around 13 to 14 million. Some people were saying that, or some articles and journals are saying that he does want to leave. He does want to move on. Chelsea being one of the teams that are being highlighted that are pretty much probably one of the, say, you wouldn't be able to afford him, probably his wages more than anything, or only one of the teams that could probably afford him at this point at the moment, along with a couple of other the bigger European teams. Yeah, I don't know. For me personally, Ben, I'm not too sure on it. I know there's a lot of Chelsea fans that are sort of up and down with this news as well. But 14 million, all right, that's not bad. His wages is going to be interesting to see. But ultimately, even though this screams a marquee signing, and if you look at Todd Boehly, he probably would love the idea of bringing someone with his type of marketing and branding, bringing him in the shirt sales and things like that you'd get from Ronaldo would be obscene, and that would make a lot of sense. From Boehly's perspective, he must want it, but ultimately, his word has always been that it needs to fit under what Thomas Tuchel wants. So what are your thoughts on this? Any more news on Cristiano Ronaldo to Chelsea? And do you feel yourself that it could happen?
Well, I mean, the first test is of that Tuchel-Boehly relationship, and we'll never really know if Ronaldo joins, but we will know if he doesn't join. And by that, I mean, if Ronaldo joins Chelsea, then naturally we'll hear that Tuchel wants him and he's great for the brand and the football team. And if he doesn't join, then it will be apparent, because we know the ownership group are interested, that Tuchel has got the power and his way. So it's an intriguing one, because I almost want Ronaldo not to join, so we get that broader indication that Tuchel and Emma Hayes on the women's side really do have the power. And then going forward, that will be very useful to Chelsea Football Club. Whereas if Ronaldo joins, even if Thomas Tuchel says that he's always wanted Cristiano Ronaldo, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So it's kind of an early test of that owner-manager relationship and who's really driving it. And what adds complication is that the minority owner, the chairman, Todd Boehly, is also currently the sporting director, so can actually be much more proactive if he wants Ronaldo. The situation, as I understand it, is as follows. Manchester United say officially Ronaldo is not for sale and really don't want to sell him to a Premier League rival, but have privately accepted that if Ronaldo wants to go and finds a club, then he has that power to, should they not sanction the move, ruin their entire off-season, shed uncertainty over their plans, and that can bleed into the entire season. And having an unhappy Ronaldo, having a player who doesn't want to turn up to training, having a player who can divide the dressing room is all a bad recipe when you're Erik ten Hag starting a new era. And Ronaldo, as I've said many times now, quoting Thierry Henry on CBS is your poison and your medicine. He's your medicine because in the short term, he gets you 20 plus goals, but he's your poison because you have to fit him into your system. You have to fit him into your dressing room. And that comes with challenges, not just because he's 37, but because he's a big personality. He wants to play a certain way. He wants to be involved in all of the big games. And Chelsea have got depth, and Thomas Tuchel may not be up for taking on board the circus, good and bad, that comes with Cristiano Ronaldo. There's no indication at this point that Tuchel is desperately keen on Cristiano Ronaldo. And talks have taken place over the last 48 hours. And as I understand it, further ones will still take place before Chelsea commit to anything. And still, privately, sources at Chelsea are not fueling this as much as the media are. So when a report comes out that 14 million is being prepared as a bid, my understanding is that there's not as much substance to that as perhaps is being reported at the moment. And Chelsea are pouring cold water privately on any notion that a proposal is imminent. But naturally, when these figures get put out there, they've come from somewhere. Even though fans think that us journalists just wake up one morning and say, what can I do to get clicks? The figures come from somewhere. Either the agent or the player, or potentially even at Chelsea Football Club to test the water and see what the reaction is. Because as soon as that's out there, it's not just a case of people like me trying to go to Chelsea and to Mendes and to Ronaldo and to other sources. People also go to Manchester United, and then Chelsea get their answer as to whether Manchester United would dismiss it, as to whether he's for sale, but not just to Chelsea, as to whether that's a laughable starting point. So it's almost like negotiating via the media and the public domain just by leaking something. So my understanding is that Chelsea are still considering Ronaldo. My understanding is not that a bid is imminent, as in the next 24 or 48 hours. It is also not that anything is so far advanced that you can say with categorical certainty it will even be tabled. And let's not forget as well that when Boehly met Mendes and lots of players, including Ronaldo, were discussed, in the gap between then and now, there were no conversations between Boehly and Tuchel about Ronaldo, and there was no proposal made. So Mendes and Boehly kept in touch, as you would expect, but there was nothing advanced. Now, of course, it's escalated because Ronaldo's not at training and is trying to find a club quickly. And that's why everyone is talking about it. But I do think at this stage, it's incorrect to say that anything is so advanced or imminent that Chelsea have locked in a specific amount and a specific bid. And the reason for that is because I actually understand, and this is perhaps the new bit of information, that Thomas Tuchel wants to get to America with Sterling and Pulisic and Werner, and obviously Ziyech if he doesn't go to Milan, and determine what he's got. And people forget that about a transfer window, that once you've got in one or two, or even your existing crop, Broja's another good example. I know his future's up in the air, but that's partly because the player is determined to know where he stands. But from Tuchel's perspective, he wants to assess. And that word assess is underrated in the early part of a window and in pre-season. And I think Tuchel wants to see what he's got, what Sterling adds, and then work out whether Ronaldo is a fit. I think that Chelsea's style is different to Manchester United's style, to the point where, because of how intricate Chelsea can build around the box, Ronaldo could be valuable. And because Lukaku's gone, you don't want to turn down 20-odd goals. But what you do want to turn down is a player that forces you to play one way, that only wants to play in the big games, that can be a passenger when he doesn't score, that's 37 years of age. And as we're seeing from this Manchester United exit that he's trying to orchestrate, can be disruptive. And unfortunately, it's the Ronaldo future show, not the Ten Hag show. And this is the challenge, that if it goes right with Ronaldo, then you get a box office star that's great for the brand. If it goes wrong with Ronaldo, you get a bad relationship between players and Ronaldo. You get a divided dressing room, some pro-Ronaldo, some anti-Ronaldo. You get a manager that can be overshadowed by a player. And given Tuchel's just come from this fractured Lukaku relationship, he needs to be not 50% sure, not convinced, not 75% sure. Thomas Tuchel needs to be 100% sure. If he needs any convincing from the ownership group, Tuchel should play the card where he goes back to the I am manager and I thought I had 100% say over this. So fortunately, we'll never know if Ronaldo joins, because you'll get the PR saying everyone's delighted by Ronaldo. But I think that it is a risk reward signing, and it will divide the fan base as to whether it is too risky or the reward with the goals and what it's worth for the brand and the excitement is just worth doing. But at this stage, I think it is incorrect to say anything other than Chelsea continue to assess their interest over Ronaldo, but there are actually other priority targets above Ronaldo at this stage. That doesn't mean they're not going to have to move quickly on Ronaldo, but if Bayern are genuinely distancing themselves, and if PSG are not interested, and if a Real return is unlikely, and if a Barca offer seems a bit farcical at this stage, then that means Ronaldo is short of options. So Chelsea would be wise to take their time, and if they do proceed with Ronaldo, make sure that it is a deal on their terms and on Tuchel's terms. And let's see where it progresses. But Chelsea are not entirely ruling it out like Bayern have at this stage. So we're going to have to wait and see. But I also don't think that a £14 million offer is in any way imminent in the next 24, 48 hours.
Yeah, to be honest, you couldn't have summed it up any better, to be honest. Listen, guys, there's over 1,200 of you here combined. Thank you for all tuning in. Massively appreciate it. Make sure we smash the like button. Get these likes over 200 on both channels, please, guys. Please subscribe on both as well, GNA TV and Chelsea Fan TV as well. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. The Ronaldo one's a bit of a weird one. When it first dropped on me, I was live on here with Con, actually, seriously Con, and we were talking about Ronaldo, and straight away our first reaction to it was don't want him. Like, as soon as his name was mentioned, and then people were sitting down and saying, well, look, what if we get him for cut wages? What if we get him for this amount? And I'm like, yeah, but it's ifs and buts. Don't get me wrong. I feel if we don't get Raphinha and Dembele, and then we're forced into potentially buying a forward because Ziyech goes to AC Milan, Lukaku's gone, we know Pulisic's staying, then maybe it's one of them things where it might be a sort of a short-term resolution. But like you said, it doesn't really show the ultimate back into Tuchel, who's already made it very clear that this is going to be some sort of rebuild. Rebuild from when you see the word rebuild, you tend to think to yourself that he's going to buy players that are going to be here from sort of the beginning and for the longevity of it, and build that spine that we've lost for a very long time at Chelsea. And Cristiano Ronaldo, for me, doesn't really answer that, to be honest. Like you said, though, he's definitely like good terminology. He's definitely like poison, 100%. He's definitely like poison
And medicine. But one thing I would just add quickly is that Chelsea fans will have their own opinion of who perhaps is an equivalent historically, but this is new territory for Chelsea fan base and Twitter and transfers. And I think that whoever Chelsea have brought in the past will never have drawn this volume of clickbait and sensation and excitement. And by the way, fact and exclusive too. So I'm not saying it's all nonsense, but if you think a transfer window or an individual target has been bad or full of twists or drama or excitement, whatever way you want to put it in the past, Ronaldo's an extra level. So it's worth being cautious as a journalist and also as a fan, because every single outlet globally will be talking about it, picking up on things, looking for clues. You'll get every perspective, you'll get every narrative. Each time it progresses, whether it's Chelsea, Manchester United, or otherwise. Even today, we've had Manchester United privately accept that they will let Ronaldo go, which I understand to be factually correct. Then we've had Chelsea make a £14 million bid. Then we've had private cooling of that from Chelsea, but not a denial. Then we've had Manchester United reiterate that their transfer stance is Cristiano Ronaldo is not for sale. And my understanding is that Ronaldo might be for sale, but not necessarily to Chelsea. So there's all kinds of narratives. And then add the clickbait, add the tabloids, add the fact that Ronaldo comes with this baggage, good and bad, this fan base that is its own sort of mob army, again, good and bad. And you have to approach a possible transfer like this with caution. And as a journalist, I think I personally would rather be right than first in this particular case. And that is sort of my philosophy generally, that it's about providing insight. It's about providing the facts. It's about moving on the story. It's trying to educate fans to understand a player, their qualities, their attributes, the line of thinking as to why they've moved, the detail around the transfer. So I would rather be a transfer journalist with insight than insider, because once you go insider, you're trying to win the race to be first. And I think with a Ronaldo transfer, if each person and fan is trying to be first to what's going on, you're going to pull your hair out over Ronaldo, because 100%. This is next level stuff.
100%. Guys, we're going to talk Raphinha next, then Sterling, and then I think we'll pretty much sum it up there. We've got about 12 minutes left of this show, so let's get into it. Raphinha, obviously, last time we spoke, obviously Chelsea had reached a full agreement. Personal terms were being waited on from Raphinha. Then Barcelona come out of the woods and disrupt, like they are at the moment, disrupting many transfers and call for huffle. And up to this point, it feels like they're not able to compete with the amount that Chelsea have offered in terms of fee. And we're still at the point now where apparently Leeds have given Barcelona a deadline. I'm assuming it's actually today. I think someone said in the chat that they think the deadline runs out today, if there is a deadline from Leeds. I really want to try and tackle Raphinha's thoughts on this. Do you feel that, obviously we know that Barcelona's his dream move, but is he completely against going to Chelsea whatsoever? Or is that offer that's still on the table from Todd Boehly still something that he will look at, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think Raphinha has always been open to Chelsea and excited by it. It's just a case of he's got 2 good job offers. Barcelona's the dream, and he's trying to make that happen. If it doesn't happen, he's got a big decision to make. He either has to join Chelsea or stay at Leeds, assuming that Arsenal don't come back in and equal Chelsea's offer. Another suitor comes on board. And I think even if another suitor comes on board, Raphinha would join Chelsea if Barcelona falls through, because he's sold on the move. The financials are not a problem. He's happy with the terms. He's just not accepted them because he's holding out for Barcelona. And that's, I don't think, detrimental or a criticism of the player, even though Chelsea fans may, and sometimes I get this on Twitter, say, why are we the second choice? It's not like that. If anything, Chelsea hijacked the Barca deal, because Barca had terms with Raphinha in March and Chelsea got an offer accepted with Leeds first. But Barcelona's interest in Raphinha is long-standing, and Raphinha's desire to play for Barcelona is long-standing. The challenge is that Barcelona need to agree a deal with Leeds United. And this, again, is where Todd Boehly was clever and quick, because by getting the financials sorted with Leeds, he's put Barcelona in a very difficult position, because they now have to match that offer financially. The terms that they get with Leeds, if a deal gets over the line, won't be identical, as I understand it, and they will be allowed to pay elements in a more staggered way than Chelsea. But this is really where you get the Chelsea tactic of negotiation most clear under Boehly, because by going in big and quick and offering to pay large amounts up front, Leeds were sold. And I know Leeds and Chelsea fans have sort of got a bit of friction and rivalry and don't always get on, but Leeds want to sell to Chelsea. And the Leeds ownership were really impressed by the speed at which Boehly operated and the transparency and the honesty. Doesn't mess around, not interested in back and forth and games. He assesses the value using his own team and the football department at Chelsea. And he goes in with, yes, his negotiating cap on, but he's very open and honest and candid, because he doesn't want to mess around this window. Why? Because Chelsea need 5 or 6 players. So it's not true that Raphinha doesn't want to join Chelsea. It's just true that his dream is Barcelona, and players can agree terms with 2 clubs. And Raphinha, in my opinion, will, if Barcelona and Leeds fail to agree a deal, join Chelsea. So the situation with agreeing a deal is that Leeds, who also have replaced Raphinha and don't want this to drag on, have given Barcelona a deadline of today to put forward their latest offer. Now, you might read in Spain, final offer, and you might read some of my comments sensationalized around D-Day, but it's not quite like that. It is the latest offer deadline. After today, when Barcelona do that, and they are expected to, there'll be discussion and negotiation, and the two clubs are relatively close on a number or a package. They're just not particularly close on how that package is going to be paid and what the add-ons will entail. And if Leeds are going to allow Barcelona to pay in installments, they want higher add-ons, and they also want more guaranteed add-ons. So an add-on can be speculative, like Leeds qualify for Europe and Barcelona win the Champions League. I'm talking generally now for any kind of player. Or an add-on can be probable, like Raphinha plays 15 games for Barcelona in La Liga. Or they can be near definite, like after 5 goals scored, or stays at the club for the duration of the contract. So these are the discussions. And obviously, it's a paradox because Barcelona want to win everything, but if they win everything, they'll pay a heck of a lot more for Raphinha to Leeds United. And if things don't go well at all, they'll pay a lot less, but then they've got a lot less from the player. So all of that is still to be determined. So today is a deadline for the latest offer, and then it will probably take 24, 48 hours, even still a week, to determine whether the actual agreement that the Spanish press have reported is already done, even though that is incorrect, is going to finally end this saga. From there, Chelsea are in a really interesting position because Chelsea can do one of two things. They can wait and see and leave their offer open and let it drag out throughout the whole window, and then later in the window potentially see if Raphinha decides he's going to join Chelsea. And by the end of the window, if Barca don't get a deal, it will be a straight choice between stay at Leeds or move to Chelsea. And that's when I think Raphinha will just move to Chelsea. But in the meantime, they may get another attacking target. They may get CR7 in, who knows? And then suddenly Raphinha isn't the priority anymore. And I don't believe from talking to sources that will be Chelsea's tactic, to just open-endedly leave the offer on the table. I've said many times now that Boehly doesn't want this to drag on. So the second tactic, which I think is really intriguing from a neutral perspective, is that if Chelsea say to Raphinha, we've given Barcelona more than enough time to get to an agreement with Leeds, they haven't. You've now got a week or this offer is off the table. At that point, Raphinha's got a choice between, yikes, either Chelsea are going to pull out and therefore I've got to join them now, or gamble on Barcelona finding an agreement with Leeds. Or alternatively, I'm going to be stuck at Leeds in all likelihood. That's the interesting scenario, and that gives Chelsea a bit more control in the negotiation. So there's no intimation yet that Chelsea are going to put a specific time frame or a 7-day deadline. I don't want to sensationalize, that will be misquoted, but the consideration at Chelsea's end is they don't want it to drag on, and that may be something they explore if they get wind that Barcelona are no closer in the next few days or week to an agreement with Leeds United. And then from Leeds United's point of view, just so I outline all perspectives, they don't really want Raphinha to stay. They've replaced him, and of course, he's a huge part of their team and a talent. But if they get wind that he's going to stay and then after the World Cup go, then they have to plan their season around, we want to use him, but we also need to plan for when he's not with us. And we've replaced him already. So it's quite an awkward situation, because if I was Jesse Marsch, I would start Raphinha in every game. But if I've brought in Sinisterra and I know that he could go at any point, it's awkward, because the more you plan for Raphinha, the more counterproductive it is to replacing Raphinha when he finally goes. And that, again, is why Leeds don't want this to drag out either. So it's quite a complex, frustrating situation. But the short answer, not that I ever give one, but fans that just have fallen asleep as I've tried to outline the different perspectives, fans should be aware of two things. There is a deadline, but it is for a latest offer. It's not a, this is your last offer or we're walking away. Leeds are not quite that bullish. And then there is still a very realistic possibility, if it falls through between Leeds and Barcelona, that Raphinha will pick Chelsea rather than staying at Leeds.
Interesting stuff. I do feel it's going to drag out. As much as Chelsea fans don't want to see it, because we just all want to know who's playing for Chelsea next season. I think we're just going to have to be patient, and whether it comes, if it comes of anything, we'll have to wait and see. But it does feel like Barcelona just haven't got, currently at the moment, just don't have that type of funds at the moment. They seem to have their fingers in many pies as well, across so many different players. It's like, how are they doing this? How in the hell are they being able to be linked to Bernardo Silva? How are they going to get Raphinha? They want, Dembele may stay, and etc. 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 But that's just probably for a story for another day, should we say? Because I did want to quickly catch you on Sterling, obviously, before we finish off. Obviously, we saw yesterday that he agreed personal terms, and now it's just down to Chelsea and Man City to agree that figure. We've been told potentially either today, tomorrow at the latest. Have you heard anything refreshing on this news?
Yeah, it's important, just again, so Twitter doesn't explode with panic, to emphasize that the 24 hours from yesterday to end of business today will, as I understand it, finalize the deal for Sterling. It will be a done deal. That doesn't mean that Chelsea will announce it today, because there's all kinds of steps after you finalize a deal, from paperwork and signing and medicals and so on. So as we've seen with everybody from Jesus to Richarlison, there's often a 4 or 5 day period between a deal being done and the club actually announcing it. The only caveat to that is obviously that if Sterling gets on a plane, he'll be seen and very visible, and Chelsea may, being aware of that, have to make some kind of statement or announcement. But they'll want to meet Sterling, do the media stuff, get an interview in the bag with him, and all kinds of things like that. So he could even end up flying out late. But from what I understand it, Sterling has known that he was going to join Chelsea. He'd made that decision a while back. And what he liked about Chelsea was the fact that Tuchel was quite meticulous in selling his role in the team, which is interesting because he didn't ask about Ronaldo, and Tuchel didn't offer any information about Ronaldo. And I wonder whether, if Sterling had known about Ronaldo or now asks about Ronaldo, if that influences any kind of way of thinking. But Sterling was sold on what Tuchel said. Boehly was very patient, and the delay on Sterling being done, even though the clubs are finalising just very minor points, the delay was more about Sterling, because Chelsea didn't want to proceed with all of these minor points until they knew that Sterling was 100% joining. And Manchester City made a late pitch, and Sterling asked Boehly for some time to deliberate. And he respected the fact, Sterling, that Boehly was prepared to take a step back. And then Sterling, obviously, from there, chose Chelsea, and the deal has moved very quickly. And as I've said for weeks, it's a 45 million upfront fee. Manchester City always wanted that kind of number because it's similar to Gabriel Jesus. And then the add-ons are going to be at least 5 million, but it could take it a little bit closer to the 55 million mark. And these minor points are still being determined. So Manchester City, as many clubs do, will kind of put like pie in the sky stuff into the conversation. I'm not saying that Chelsea will agree to all these things, but this is why the add-ons are sometimes a little bit unclear, because I've known clubs, I'm talking generally now, to say, what if Sterling scores 40 goals? We want another million. What if Chelsea win the quadruple? We want another 5 million, and so on. So it's in the interest of Manchester City to try their luck. But generally, it's going to be a 45 to 50 million probable or almost certain, including base fee and add-ons. And then there could be a little bit more. So it could push 55 million, but it's going to surpass 50 million for sure, all in, including the add-ons. And some of the add-ons are shared with media privately. Some of them are not. So you just sort of have to wait and see, because obviously Chelsea don't want to, and Man City don't want to reveal all of their tactics. But it's been apparent, and I've reported this for weeks now, that it's 45 million as the guaranteed fee plus the add-ons. And the deal will be done by the end of day today as far as the club to clubs. And this is a 100% done deal, regardless of when it now gets announced. And Sterling will play a part on the US tour for sure. And it's a really exciting signing for Chelsea. And I would call it a flagship signing for Chelsea. I think he's a brilliant player. He offers everything that Chelsea need, and he'll fit really well into the system. And I expect him to excel in a Chelsea shirt and really excite Chelsea fans. So first signing of the Boehly era, and just a really, really good one. And I think if Chelsea fans can't get excited about Sterling, then they should go off to a hospital, get an MRI, and get their heads checked.
That made me laugh a bit, because I think some of them do need that anyway in general, especially the ones that I see on the timeline. That's why I try to stay away from Twitter too much, because no one's ever happy with with everything, shall we say. CD, thank you for becoming a member on the channel as well. Thank you very much. But that is it, guys. We're going to conclude it here. I know Ben's got to leave because he's got somewhere else to be. He's a very busy guy. And yeah, the potential that we'll be able to do another show maybe next week. We'll see how we get on with Ben, if he's got the time. We'll see what happens. But Ben, any sort of final words you'd like to say, mate?
No, just that, signings come like buses. So watch this space on a defensive signing, and the outgoing sense, Broja, I saw in the chat just briefly. Similar situation to I've reported. Not a ton has changed. People forget the player side of things sometimes with a outgoing, and from Broja's perspective, Tuchel wants to assess in pre-season. That's not changed. Lots of interest, and obviously if the conversation between Tuchel and Broja implies he's not going to be integral this season, that's where it gets interesting, because Chelsea might want a loan to cover their bases, but Broja may turn around and say, well, I only want a permanent move because I've been on loan at Vitesse, I've been on loan at Southampton. So that player aspect of an outgoing, particularly at Chelsea, and this is kind of the damage, perhaps that's a strong word, but this is the problem of Chelsea's previous recruitment model of buying young, buying in high volume, hedging their bets on lots of young talents, and then finding that those talents are not prepared to be patient with Chelsea Football Club because they've seen no historical evidence that they're going to be able to come back and get a pathway to regular first team football. So then when you get a player like Broja, Conor Gallagher as well, having an outstanding season, and I suppose with Gallagher, outstanding constitutes particularly the first half of the season, and with Broja, outstanding might be a bit strong, but he's still got, I think, 6 Premier League goals, which for a player of his age shows his potential. He's fully entitled to say, well, if you're not going to play me, especially not with Lukaku departing and only one attacking target in Sterling coming in, then I want to go. And that's what Newcastle, what West Ham are really clinging to at the moment, that they get the opportunism because the player tells Chelsea he wants a permanent move. So Tuchel would just like to assess. And of course, Chelsea would like to be greedy and say, not for sale at the moment, or only a loan, and we'll pull him back. And then if they were to only loan him, you loan to, say, West Ham, and next summer you've got a bit of leverage with Declan Rice. Whereas right now it's not true to say that Broja and Rice could be factored into anything. West Ham are being very bullish that there's no swap deal, especially not with respect, with Broja at 25, 30 odd million for Rice. Rice is not for sale at this point, and West Ham haven't really wavered on that position. So I think that's intriguing and up in the air, but I think that Tuchel would still prefer just to assess him in pre-season because of the season that he had at Southampton last campaign. So that's probably the final thing just to say. But yeah, look, Chelsea, I think, can get excited now. I still think that there will be a minimum of 5 signings come the end of the window, if not 6. And for all the impatience, if a few come in quickly now, there's cause for excitement. And obviously the new kits come out as well, which I quite like. The collar leaps out. Not everyone's cup of tea, but I like it. I would say I'd wear it, but a bit of a cardinal sin as a Leicester fan to wear another team's shirt. But if someone wants to send me one, I'll hang it up on the wall for sure. And let's hope the America tour goes well. I'll be out there for some of it. Multiple teams at CBS, so not just Chelsea, but I'll certainly try and touch base with Chelsea. And here's to some movement and some clarity over the Raphinhas and Neymars and Ronaldos of this world. So
it will be nice to actually sit here and do a show with you where we're actually talking about the contract lengths, the wages, how they fit in the team, what Tuchel's ideas are. At the moment, I think this is a lot of rumours in and around Chelsea, and I think we just feel like we're being starved in many ways. But you're right, patience is a key, and Chelsea could easily get 5 or 6 of these players across the door. So I would say people just be patient. Ben, hopefully, will be back with us, like I said, next week. But make sure, guys, before you leave, smash the like button, subscribe to Chelsea Fan TV and GNA TV as well. So both, if you can. We've got over 1,200 of you viewers still here. Thank you very much for locking in on this show as well. Take care of yourselves. Have a good rest of your day. And we'll see you again very, very soon. See you later.